When I started Microsoft, I didn't think of it as all that risky. The thing that was scary to me wasn't quitting and starting the company. It was when I started hiring my friends and they expected to be paid.
In this video, former Microsoft CEO and co-founder Bill Gates gives insights into his rise to success, some of the challenges that he faced, as well as advice for young people. We hope this information inspires you to get started on your dream. So please watch until the end. And if you're new here, consider subscribing so that you won't miss other educated videos like this. Let's get started.
I was lucky enough when I was quite young to have an exposure to computers, which were very expensive and limited in what they could do, but still fascinating. And some friends and I really talked about that and decided that they would change because of a miracle technology of chips into something that everybody could take advantage of. And we really thought writing software was a neat thing. We hired our friends who wrote software, we thought about what the potentials were and really didn't see any limit. And so that vision of getting our friends together, getting them to work as a team, really seeing what kind of tool this could be, a tool of what we talked about as the information age, where the key thing is magnifying your brain power instead of just your muscle power. And by pursuing that with a pretty incredible focus and being there at the very beginning of the industry, we were able to build a company that has played a very central role in what's been a pretty big revolution. Now, fortunately, the revolution is still at the beginning. It was 23 years ago when we started the company, but there's no doubt that taking the habits we formed and sticking with those, which would be hard to change, the next 23 years are going to give us a lot more potential and maybe even get us pretty close to that original vision, which was a computer on every desk and in every home. And that's a fun thing to be involved with.
Bill Gates then explains how he defines success personally.
I think that the key point there is you've got to enjoy what you do every day. And for me, that's working with very smart people. It's working on new problems. Every time we think, hey, we've had a little bit of success, we're pretty careful not to dwell on it too much because the bar gets raised. People's expectations of the products, we've always got customer feedback telling us the machines are too complicated, they're not natural enough. And the competition, the breakthroughs, the research make the field I'm in, I think, the most exciting field there is. There's some other good fields. Biotechnology is a good field because it's changing the world of medicine and health. But the computer industry, in particular software, I think is the most exciting, and I think I have the best job in that business.
Bill Gates then describes what innovation means to him.
Technology business has a lot of twists and turns, and that's partly why it's such a fun business, is that no company gets to rest on its laurels. IBM was as dominant or more dominant than any company will ever be in technology. That's just not going to happen again. And they had the smartest people and they had all the customer feedback, and yet they missed a few turns in the road. And so that makes you wake up every day thinking, let's try to make sure today's not the day we miss the turn in the road. Let's find out what's going on in speech recognition. Let's go find out what's going on in artificial intelligence. Let's make sure we're hiring in the kind of people who can pull those things together and make sure we don't get surprised. Sometimes we do get taken by surprise. For example, the internet came along and we had it sort of as a fifth or sixth priority. It wasn't like somebody said internet to me and I said, oh, I don't know how to spell that. I said, yeah, I got that on my list, I'm okay. But there came a point where we realized it was happening faster and it was a much deeper phenomena than it had been recognized in our strategy. And so that was a case where, as an act of leadership, I had to create a sense of crisis and have a couple months where we all just threw ideas and sent electronic mail around, went on a bunch of retreats, and then eventually coalesced around a few ideas where we said, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to measure ourselves internally, and here's what the world should think. Here's what we're going to tell them about what we're going to do. And that kind of crisis is likely to come up every 3 or 4 years or so.
Bill Gates describes who his biggest role models are and what role they played in his success, if any.
I had great parents, both of whom were involved in lots of interesting activities and would come home and talk to us about the world of business or law or politics or the charitable activities they were involved in. And so that made us, myself, my sisters always thought about, well, what are we going to do out there? They had us as avid readers, and so we had pretty broad interests in reading. Scientists were a group that I gravitated to because this notion that just out of their heads they came up with neat ideas, that sort of fascinated me. So quite a bit of the time I thought I'd be a mathematician or a scientist. It was only when I got to Harvard that I started to think of this sort of all-absorbing hobby I'd had, computer stuff, which I just thought, okay, I got to get rid of this, and decided to do something serious. I started to realize, you know, this is pretty serious. And it's actually more interesting and more impactful than going and trying to come up with a new theory in math or anything else. And so I had that dilemma for a couple of years, but eventually decided that computers really was a great thing to be involved with.
Bill explains the tactics he used to expand Microsoft's business on a global level.
One great thing about our business is it is global. That what do you need in a spreadsheet? About the same thing in Korea and Egypt as you need in the United States. And the PC standard is a global standard. We have to do some adaptation for the local languages, and that's a fun part of our business, understanding bi-directional languages and the large bets that you have in Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. And over the years, we've gotten very good at that. In fact, our market share is much higher outside the United States than it is inside the United States because it's relatively hard to set up subsidiaries, understand local conditions, local distribution, and relationships. And so, since most of our competitors are in the US and aren't as good at doing international business, we thrive even better in these other countries. Most of our growth will come from outside the United States. The United States will get to the point where it's largely a replacement market. Most homes and business desktops will have PCs. Now that doesn't mean they won't replace them, that they won't want better software that can see, listen, and learn. But outside the US, we still have that early slope phenomena. So it's very much a global business.
Bill Gates explains the risks of starting a new business and how he was able to get people to support him.
When I started Microsoft, I didn't think of it as all that risky. And I was so excited about what we were doing. It's true I could have gone bankrupt. I had a set of skills that were highly employable. And in fact, my parents were still willing to let me go back to Harvard and finish my education if I wanted to. The thing that was scary to me wasn't quitting and starting the company. It was when I started hiring my friends and they expected to be paid. And then we had customers who went bankrupt, customers that I'd counted on to come through. And so then I got this incredibly conservative approach that I wanted to have enough money in the bank to pay a year's worth of payroll, even if we didn't get any payments coming in. And you know, I'm almost true to that the whole time. We have about 10 billion now, which is pretty much enough for the next year. If you're going to start a company, it takes so much energy that you better overcome your feeling of risk. I don't think that you necessarily, if you're going to start a company, should do it at the start of your career. I think there's a lot to be said for working for a company, learning how they do things. If you're young, it's hard to go lease premises. They made that hard for me. You couldn't rent a car when you were under 25 at the time, so I was always taking taxis to go see customers. People would say, we're going to go have a discussion in the bar. Well, I couldn't go to the bar. And that's fun because I'll tell you, when people are first skeptical and they go, this kid doesn't know anything, then when you show them you've really got a good product and you something, they actually tend to go overboard and they think, whoa, they know a lot. Let's really do an incredible amount with these people. So our youth, at least in this country, was a huge asset for us once we reached a certain threshold. It's hard to hire older people because they'll be a little bit conservative about whether they should come and take the risk. And it took 3 or 4 years before we could go out into the normal sort of employment pool. But those problems that come with starting a firm, you better think of those as part of the challenge that is part of the excitement.
Bill Gates then discusses the things he would keep if he had to start all over after losing everything.
Starting out at a small scale again, it's got a certain attraction to it. I think it's interesting. Now, our business is not one where money makes that much difference at all. In fact, somebody was saying to me recently that Microsoft has such a strong position in our business. And I was saying, hey, if you took 30 of the top people and drafted them over to the other team, the score would change very quickly. First of all, not only would the 30 go, the people who like working with the 30 would go with them. And so that there's not some asset there. It's all the products are going to be obsolete very rapidly. It's the people and their sense of how to do things and their enjoyment and working with each other. And I'd be ashamed to give that up. Starting another company like that again, I'd have a blast doing it.
If you found value in this video, we would like to give you another interesting video for you to enjoy next. We would, however, highly appreciate it if you could like this video and share it with your friends on social media. Don't forget to subscribe if you are new here so you won't miss another one of our videos. The more you learn, the more you earn.